What's going on, fellow A-plusers, fellow Force users? It is I, your host, Adam Perez. We are back once again with a brand new review as we are getting ready to go ahead and talk some Star Wars Skeleton Crews. We got ourselves a brand new Star Wars television series. We're going to be diving into episodes number 1 and 2, giving you our overall thoughts, pros and cons, and of course, grading this episode at the end of the show. So sit back, relax, talk some Star Wars with us, and we'll see you on the other side. Good evening, A-plusers. It is I, your host, Adam Perez, joined none other by my co-host, Will Polk from Scene and Nerd. What's going on, buddy? Good to see you, man. How you doing?
Good to see you. What's up, Adam? Thanks for having me back.
Of course, man. Look, we had a fantastic time last time talking some Acolyte, and I'm so thankful that I'm going to be able to have you and Stewart and Crystal back. We are a little undermanned today. Half the Jedi Council is here. I know Crystal has another gig tonight, and then I believe Stewart, unfortunately, has a little bit of a stomach bug, so homeboy is not feeling too well today. So send your blessings his way for sure. But Will, we've done this before. We've had a two-man job before. We can handle this today.
We got this. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a fun show to talk about too. So I think we're going to have a great chat tonight.
Yeah, man, we're definitely going to have some fun. We're going to be getting into Skeleton Crew for you guys. We had 2 episode premiere that wind up dropping Tuesday. Was it Tuesday? No, Monday night.
Yeah, they dropped it early. Yeah.
Yeah. Are they going back to Tuesdays next week?
Yeah. Which I think I was glad they came out of the holiday with, I guess, early Christmas present for all the Star Wars fans because they did drop it early. But I think moving forward for the remaining, I guess, 6 episodes, it'll be on Tuesday night.
So I'm definitely looking forward to it. But yeah, going forward, live every Wednesday for you guys, 10 p.m. Central Time. We should have 4 people here to go ahead and do these reviews. But Will and I are going to sit back and enjoy each other's company and break down tonight's episode. Look, at the end of the day, guys, these are simply our A+ opinions, but we always want to know yours. If you had the opportunity to check out the first 2 episodes as we're going through, feel free to give us some of your thoughts in the comment section box below or the live chat, and we'll definitely converse with you and bounce some ideas off of you guys. So I will say I'm happy Star Wars is back, man. I have after the Acolyte, I was feeling some type of way, Will. I know we had talked about the idea of like if we don't get another Acolyte season 2, I would be okay with it. And as time rolled on, I really wanted an Acolyte season 2. So I've kind of been a little bit in a slump here, waiting for Skeleton Crew to certainly come by. I have been really excited because I've loved the work that John Watts and Christopher Ford have done on their Spider-Man run for MCU, and I was really excited to see them kind of play in this world. So let me ask you, Will, first impressions overall, just if you want to give brief thoughts on the first 2 episodes, and then we'll dive into episode 1 real quick. How are you feeling about the first 2 episodes?
I'm actually feeling pretty good with how the first 2 episodes ended up. I shared on our podcast last night. I did just a quick spoiler thoughts on the show, and I will say in total transparency and honesty that whenever the show started, I did have, especially given it felt almost beat for beat A New Hope, and as far as plug in pirate for Stormtrooper, the freighter instead of rebellion,
Yes.
It was like some traitors, but beat for beat, it was pretty much A New Hope. And there were some other things that happened throughout the episode too that were callbacks to other things. So I gotta admit, I had a bad feeling about that. I did.
They even threw in some power converters in there too.
Yeah, they did the power converters. I mean, the Jude Law's character. Well, we later find out that that's his character, but lifting it up and all that kind of stuff. Everything about it, I was like, oh gosh. But especially given what we've been through the last little bit with Star Wars. However, as the show progressed, and of course started to see some of the things that we were teased in the trailers and the promotional materials, it was true. It was truly a nostalgia in a good way. I went back when I think when Wynn was playing with the action figures on and when he and Neil were like in the on the sidewalk and doing their mimicking the fight between Darth Vader and Luke and all that kind of stuff. It took me back to being 1983 when I was 10 years old and a kid, and really stoked those good feelings from the original, the OG Star Wars. As I think as I tweet, as I posted on social media on our show account, and also on our even on our show last night, that I got those good feelings. The suburbia feel, of course, all the things we've heard about it being Goonies influenced, and E.T. and the Amblin films with Spielberg, and all those 80s, all those 80 tropes. Well, now are tropes, but even growing up in the 80s, I mean, there's just so many like elements of it that I felt that I was like, okay, good. And then just to even the archetypes of the kids, again, they had characters that we're familiar with, um, and the suburbia aspect of it as well. It was just like, okay, I'm in the Star Wars universe, but it's at the same time, I guess having those feelings of nostalgia and grounding with, with the neighborhood and everything like that. It did for me at least. I felt something somewhat fresh, I guess. Just what we're in this universe, but at the same time, there's some familiarities with just life here, and so
Absolutely.
so those were my so really the first two episodes, and it's sort of how things definitely was a lot of setup. Again, I think with the way these streaming shows are dropping these 2 to 3 drops on the premiere days. I think that's okay. I mean, basically, I just know just set aside about an hour and a half. It's going to be almost a feature length time of watching TV, and for this show, I think it worked because if they had stopped it with just the first one, and then we had to wait till next week for episode two, um, yeah, maybe it's just now how I'm programmed now as far as with streaming drops that I would have felt like I don't know if I would have had the same good feelings that I have now, because I would have to wait a week, because these two episodes really complemented each other very well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I do wonder if they film these series with that in mind. Like, I wonder if they, when they're filming it, they have an idea like, hey, this is gonna be a 2 episode drop or a 3 episode drop to kick you
Mhm.
off, so you know how to maybe pace yourself in regards to how it's gonna be presented to people. Because I would agree with you. I do think that these first 2 episodes complemented each other well. Because I did find myself after the first episode when it went off, I was like, okay, it
Yeah,
was like, okay, I enjoyed it, but okay. But the idea of having them back to back, it definitely made it feel more complete for sure.
yeah.
Um, and you almost took the words right out of my mouth in regards to the suburbia aspect of this. In my notes, I said I thought they did a great job of making things feel familiar yet adventurous and new. Like the idea of having the suburban town, I think really gives us something to attach ourselves to, that we can see ourselves as kids in, or that we remember those Amblin sort of adventures. So you, even though it's a new adventure in a galaxy far, far away, the fact that it hits us with that nostalgia because it is so familiar. I still think it really works in that sense of new characters, their arcs and stuff, and just the other mysteries that are tied into it. It is a sense of familiarity. I can't even say the word now, but it does have that familiar sense with a freshness attached to it. And for me, that it really worked. So yeah, I thought the first 2 episodes worked well together. I am glad that they certainly wind up dropping the way that they did. I was actually a fan of the performances too.
Mhm.
I know I might have been had my issues with some of the kids from the Acolyte, but seeing the kids in here, I feel like they're a little bit more developed as actors. I love their chemistry with each other, the squabbling back and forth. I thought the Wim and Neil friendship and bond was really fun to me. I definitely understand what you meant when you said like seeing them on the sidewalk, because I when I think of that, I just think of myself like that was me as a nerd, like that was me as a kid, you know.
Mhm.
And then like other people looking at you like, what are you guys doing, and just feeling like that awkward moment, like, oh my goodness, we got caught nerding out, sort of thing. So I think it's um I just think it's really great relationships and chemistry that they all have with each other. And so I really enjoyed how the episode certainly played itself out. It is one of those things where they've added a ton of mystery in here.
Mhm.
I some of the alien work, as far as the alien designs,
Mhm.
look absolutely incredible. The puppeteering and stuff. I mean, I remember watching I think it might have been like a round table of filmmakers, and they started talking about their experiences working with some of the puppeteering, and they literally showed a behind the sequence of bringing the robot SM-33 to life, and how they had a puppeteer behind it, and all this stuff. I mean, it was just truly filmmaking magic, I thought, at its finest in here, especially when we wind up getting into something like episode 2, and you can really see just the expansiveness of this world. Like I was saying, even though we got that level of feeling familiar, I think because we get that level of feeling familiar when the kids do go out and to a brand new world, I think as a viewer, it also allows us to be in shock and awe of like the things that they're kind of experiencing. And I think it played itself really, really well. And so first 2 episodes in, man, I think this is a win. I
Yeah.
hope that I hope that they continue on a really good trajectory here. I know they got some really incredible directors that are going to be on board, but I hope story wise, they definitely have intrigued me with some of the mystery certainly going on, and just the concept of them having to go get back home and stuff. I definitely think I'm going to be invested for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's for me the mystery and stuff was a double-edged sword, quite frankly, because especially when and I know we'll get more into the show as far as some of the plot elements and stuff, but I will say that, and I felt this when I saw a still photo or something on the internet somewhere. But then whenever we did get that it wasn't a Jedi temple, but it was a ship, the first thing I did when I was sitting there watching it real time was like, huh, so this is Star Wars' version of Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I can totally see that.
Because when is dull, when is Fern. I mean, it's just like all the is so so for me, so even though there were a lot of things that I did like about the show, and also fan reaction, I think it's doing pretty well as far as all to the tomato meter and stuff, and I think the critics are really enjoying it. So it is nice to see. You can get on social media now, and it's not a bunch of shit posting about Star Wars. Um, but I will say that I do have, whenever we do our little grading down the line with this episode, I will, that it may give a little demerit for that, because I've watched 2 seasons of Star Trek Prodigy. Well, I'm still working my way through season 2 of Prodigy, but the beats and everything about it, I was just like, huh, it's here's another situation of Star Wars and Star Trek, maybe have playing off of one another, sort of like Wrath of Khan and the Vengeance of it was, I think, the Vengeance of Khan, and the Return of the Revenge of the Jedi, or something like that back in the day, because we had that kind of similar thing going on here. It's like, which one came first, Prodigy or or uh, or uh, or they may have been announced the same year. Was it 2019 when this was announced? Because I know
Yeah,
when was
maybe at the
Once a
I'm
Year?
trying what the
It was
last
it
celebration
was
was. It must have
yeah,
been
it was at
yeah.
yeah, it was a Star Wars Celebration. I can't remember if it was before or after the pandemic started, but
Something tells me it might have. I can't remember. I'm trying to remember when John
yeah.
Watts said he pitched this idea to them. It's definitely been a minute. I am glad that you brought up the familiar the comparisons between A New Hope, because I did have that moment of like, man, do we have to start almost every Star Wars project with
Mhm.
like somebody boarding somebody else's ship, and then you get that hallway sequence and stuff, you
Yeah,
know?
everything. I mean,
Yeah.
beat for beat. I mean, and that's why I was really, really worried. But but once we got past the title, card, and we get to the school, and seeing Attin, or I think that's the name of the planet,
Yeah.
and yeah, um, then then I was just like, okay, all right. The only other time we did get something like, again, where I was just like, okay, y'all, be careful here. Was of course when Wynn was, zipping through the forest. Of course, it felt
Oh
like I was
yeah.
back on Endor, but there's other beats in there too. I'm sure Ryan Airy over at Screen Crush has probably like gone through, or Heavy Spoilers have probably gone through like every single like Easter egg. But those are ones that just those are the ones for me that just sort of jump off right off, when I was watching it real time.
Oh, let's get into start breaking down each episode individually. For episode one, I'll go ahead and kick this one up. We kind of talked a little bit about it, but one of the things that really I enjoyed about episode one, even though I will say, I think for me, pacing wise, it was a little bit slow for me. That's why I think, for reasons as to why I really enjoyed the idea that they dropped them back to back, the first two episodes. I think it really worked well together. But just an episode one, it definitely leaves me wanting more. But I do love the setup. Like, I do love the exploration of the kids and their families, especially the family dynamics. I found really fascinating in here. So
Leaves me
the,
wanting more.
the idea of like Wim being his dad seemingly being like a single father. I do have questions about where the mom is at. Clearly his father seems to be like the type of person that's constantly busy, maybe too busy to hang out with his son as much as he needs to. Like, the idea that he happens to not be home, at least during this period, it almost to me tends to suggest that maybe this is almost like normal and natural for him. So it does feel like Wim is left to his own devices to play with his imagination, to really go down these rabbit holes and learn a little bit more about the Jedi. So his personality traits certainly make a lot of sense to me. I love the idea of, like, even though Wim seems to be part of a single parent family, his buddy Neil at the on the other side of things tends to have like a really great, full nuclear family almost. He's got siblings and stuff. He goes home, his parents are waiting for them. He's, they talk, I love I just really love Neil's family in here and how they present it to him. Fern, the concept that she's clearly like the what is it, the unsecretary, what's her name, was it the Farah? I can't remember what her title was though. the,
Fern,
the undersecretary,
the undersecretary.
Undersecretary Farah is
Yeah,
Fern's mom. And
yeah.
so, she fits that description of like the rebel, because your mom is like in charge of a lot of things, right? Like,
Mhm, mhm.
trying to sneak things past her mom. I'm really big fan of that dynamic. And then, of course, KB, seemingly
Yeah,
being the loner also out of the group. I am curious if they're going to explain why she wears the Geordie visors the way that she does. But she seems to be very like technically sound and stuff. So I really enjoy sort of laying the groundwork for the family dynamic in here, because it adds a lot to like why Neil wants to go home so bad,
yeah.
why Wim wants to be on this adventure, why Fern is the way she is with how she handles the boys in here and things like that. And so it all adds to a really great dynamic between the kids. And if anything, I think it also puts Wim's father in an interesting predicament in here of now, like, I don't want to say having to prove or show his son that he loves him, but the idea that his father now has to be very active in trying to get his
Yeah.
boy back, when he seemed, I don't want to say has seemingly like, um what's the word I'm looking for, like, not taking advantage of it, but he's he definitely has, I don't want to say he hasn't necessarily been there for Wim, but he's
Yeah,
definitely, he
yeah,
doesn't really paid attention to him so much. And so it definitely forces him now to maybe have to sit with that a little bit now that his son is certainly lost. And so for me, I was a really big fan of the family dynamic and just establishing really also the planet at Attin. And we'll get a little bit into the mystery for episode two, but just the idea of like name dropping things like the Republic,
yeah.
the great work, seeing the lights in the sky at night and making you question, like, what is that, is there like a barrier around this town, sort of thing.
Mhm.
um it really adds for me that the mystery of that and the planet that they're on really kind of worked for me. And so yeah, I'm eager to find out exactly what this great works certainly is here. But what did you think about the first episode in a nutshell?
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up really, really well. I mean, I think the family dynamic is definitely one there, and as I mentioned before, it really you could tell this was a show written by Gen Xers, or has a pretty whims the latch prototypical the latchkey kid, and everything that goes along with that, and with his father, as you were describing their relationship, I was thinking about, some of the plots of like the after school specials from back in the 80s and early 90s, and the harried parent, and something happens, and then at the end of 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever of the show, they'll have this grand reunion moment, because mother or father, who whichever parent it is, will realize the error of, like, being so wrapped up in their job and stuff, and harried and all that kind of stuff. But then this kind of thing happens, and then everybody's like, comes to hugs. And again, it really, I mean, I watched Goonies about it, maybe a few months ago.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Just happened to come across it, when I was just aimlessly channel surfing, and really, as I was watching this show, I mean, there's definitely those types of those prototypical characters that you see, but also, another show I thought about was, another movie I thought about from that time period is Never Ending Story,
Oh yeah.
um, with the adventure, and of course ET, and really the whole quest that, especially once they do find that when they go into what they thought was the Jedi Temple, and just that, and all the things that like popped up and happened in there. Again, it just really leans heavy on that nostalgia, but in a good way. That, again, it reminds you that we're just having this in the Star Wars universe, and to your point too, using all the callbacks to, that the New Republic is in place, that we're still not too far, from the Imperial period, with the show, with with the call, when we see the Imperial credits, and well, I guess that's more in episode 2, but also just the, with the stories that's being told, because I think the show is, I don't know, like, when in the Mandalorian period is, as far as like, as far as seasons 1 through 3, is it like right after season 3, or thereabouts? But but it is things, the Jedi at this time, based off of like what we got earlier this year with the Acolyte, where the Jedi are more, morally ambiguous, and they were, politicians, and doing all the, things that like made us, um, question the lore that we know about the Jedi. And this period, Jedi are still peaked because it's just right after the Great War, and the New Republic is established, and so it's good to be a Jedi again. So, yeah, so and then like KB, she was the data
Yeah.
yeah, of the show, because that was the character again from Goonies, I believe, who was like the whiz kid who could like fix anything. Um, and I guess Wim reminded me. I guess when I thought about Never Ending Story, this plug in Elliot, or the kid from Never Ending Story. I mean, that was sort of the kid that I most identified with him. And then Neil, yeah, you're right. He's got the great life, and it makes so much sense why he wants, whenever they, he's like, let's just leave this thing alone. Let's just go home, because he has something, and um, whenever you're like, he like comes across Neil in the nice little jacuzzi bath there. I mean, as far as
Yeah, that
like,
was a great scene. That was a great
oh,
scene.
great scene. Yeah, I mean, this kid's got he's got this nice house, you got the nice clean garage, and you got
Got
every,
the bubble bath going,
bubble bath going. Yeah, and he's just like, I have it great. And so
got
yeah,
that
so there's all those little,
perfect comb over and everything,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. exactly, and he's, and obviously Neil has already become the breakout social media darling of the show. He's definitely, watch out, Grogu. You may have some competition this Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love the scene when he's in the classroom and one of the girls starts talking and he's just like, he completely in love, just has a crush on somebody. Like Neil is I was a really big fan of Neil in here,
Yeah.
man. I there's a great scene towards the end when they're both going to the ship and Wim is like, "All right, you hold this and then I'm going to go down and you support me." And then he's like, "All right, cool." And then he
Mhm.
jumps back and he pulls Neil forward and they
Yep.
both roll down the
Yeah.
hill. I thought that
Yep.
was funny, and Neil's response was, "Your bones are too heavy," and it just made me really chuckle. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really great humorous moments. But yeah, Neil is one of my favorites, and I think especially after seeing episode 2, I think Fern is growing on me as one of my two favorite characters. Wim is becoming a little bit annoying to me at this point.
Yeah.
Only two
Yeah.
episodes in,
Yeah.
but I get his like ambitiousness to like just want to explore and
Yeah.
do everything at this point.
Fern,
Um,
Fern is like Fern is like Hermione in the Harry Potter series.
yes, yes, yes. That's great. That's a great callback. And yeah, you mentioned something too about like the acolyte and the lightsabers and the Jedi and stuff. And like, I was thinking about while I was watching this, like, even though the acolyte was something new, we've seen Jedi and Sith
Mhm.
and lightsaber battles before, and that's not to take away from the acolyte and the good things that it did do. But when I watch Skeleton Crew, I was thinking to myself, like, man, this just feels really fresh to me. This is like a fresh take, in the sense of an adventure that I really want to go on. So far, after watching the first 2 episodes, so we'll definitely see how it goes. I got some comments here from Marcelino. um, he said, "I can't believe that they referenced the holiday special, even though George Lucas wants to forget it." I think that's what hi- Neil's brothers or siblings was watching, right, in his house.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah, I
think that
had
was
to go back and look. I can't recall. Yeah. I missed that. Actually, I missed that one. So good call there, Marcelino.
um. He said he can't stay around, but he'll let us know some of his thoughts on the episode in the comments after the live stream. So that's cool. A couple of pros from this particular week's episode for episode 1 at least. Um, you know, it's not quite the opening crawl from Star Wars, but I feel
Mhm.
like we've seen the blue text
Yeah.
before. I don't know if we've seen it maybe in Ahsoka, maybe I can't remember if they did it at the beginning of the Acolyte also, but it's kind of growing on me a little bit. How about you?
Yeah, I think the Acolyte had the red text, I want to say, just to like sort of set up the Sith angle that they were
Oh,
going
uh-huh,
for.
uh-huh.
But yeah, we have seen the blue text in some other
Maybe
iterations.
Andor? I can't remember.
Yeah, yeah, Andor. Actually I was just rewatching a little bit of Andor this past weekend, over the holiday. But yeah, I mean that blue text in the crawl has, I know it was definitely in Rogue One for sure.
Mhm.
Um, but that yeah, I've seen it in a couple other elements, and yeah, they do have the traditional, pan up or pan down to the planet and a ship or something. That we all know as that you're in that Star Wars universe whenever after whatever theme song that's played, you'll get that pan. Um,
And,
and yeah.
and I also love, to me, I was just a really big fan of the mystery in here, and
Mm,
I say that because I do find just the setting interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more about the myth and what people believe in episode 2, but the name drop of the great work fascinates me, and I
mm,
do wonder what, at Attin's great work certainly is. I mean, they gotta literally take career assessments tests to
yeah,
find out what they're gonna be for the rest of their life almost at
yeah,
such young
yeah.
ages, and it does make me wonder what the great works are or what the great work is. And what I did look this up because the term great work sounded very familiar to me. And so I looked it up. I went online and Wikipedia says has something that's called great works. And it was a reason why it sounded familiar because it says the great works were a group of projects undertaken by the Galactic Republic during Supreme Chancellor Lena So during the High Republic era.
Mm.
It says, if you guys have been reading some of the High Republic novels, Starlight Beacon, a massive space station constructed on the frontier of the galaxy, was one of her great works. Other great works that So had planned included a Republic Fair, construction of communication relays throughout the galaxy, the negotiations of a treaty between the Quarren and the Mon Calamari, cracking the code of Bacta cultivation, and other technological innovations. I don't know if this is connected to Chancellor Lena Soul's great works, or if this is just a coincidence that John Watts and Christopher Ford wanted to just refer to this as. But based off of what we eventually get in season 2, it does make me wonder when at Attin, or at least this town, when this was sort of cultivated and like established, if you will.
Mhm.
If the town goes back as far as the High Republic era, which, as we know from the Acolyte, is only what, like 50 to 100 years before the Phantom Menace. So I don't want to say not significantly long, but I mean, a significant amount of time for sure. So I do wonder if this is part of those great works or just how this came to be. But I am fascinated as to what if they will eventually reveal to us what the great works are.
Yeah, we know usually when they throw a reference in there like that, there is hopefully there a story reason why, and especially I know we'll get more into episode 2 here in a moment, but when you see this planet, it seems like it's on the outer rim, and maybe it was detached from a lot of the conflict that happened during the Imperial period. So
Mm,
because when you look at I mean, it doesn't, it seems that it was really truly untouched by
yeah.
there's no remnants of the empire, it seems, there at all, or if there were, the empire really didn't, maybe if anything, they use these kids, maybe they, with the test that they're talking about, maybe that's how they got some of their raw cadets for the Imperial Academy, or because it definitely seems like there is the remnants of some type of caste system on this planet, especially when
Uh-huh.
you have these tests, or right, for folks who are familiar with, like, people who've been schooled in the UK, or the British system, education system, they have the A levels and the O levels, um so that it seems that it's that similar type of educational structure too, where uh, and we all, also we see it too, even here, like with the with the ASVAB too. If, like, if folks want to go to military service, you take the ASVAB to see what your aptitudes are, so like, will you be you know in one career path or another. So it seems like that is what's going on this planet, and also just how the droids are the really the people who, it's a very planned,
Yeah.
almost like planned, organized society,
Yeah.
almost like a, a real world analog is like Singapore. So, where everything is planned and prescripted, and there's an order of things. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hope, I'm hoping that even though this is a kids show, I mean, because let's call it for what it is. It is a show primarily targeted towards kids, but there's enough there that I think it's enough for all ages to enjoy it. And so, to your point about bringing up the great works, and if they are referencing something from the lore, maybe it has something to, this maybe this planet is the representation of a lot of those projects that have made it through all the millennia and hasn't been impacted by all the conflicts that's been going on in the rest of the galaxy.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility because in the High Republic, what the concept of them is they have their core worlds and they're really trying to reach out into the frontier of the galaxy, go to those outer rim planets and kind of bring them in. And so there is a level of it maybe making a little sense of the idea of them reaching out, establishing something, and then leaving it maybe to its own devices. Let's keep it in as secret as possible. Because I would agree with you, it feels very untouched from anybody else around here. So I am fascinated by that. Yeah. Do you have any pros from this episode? Some things that maybe we didn't go over?
I think I hit most of them. I think it really just really did a good job of just sort of setting introducing everyone, and sort of laying the groundwork for all these characters, and it just really seems like it's going to be a journey into maybe William's loss of innocence.
Mm, I can see that
Because
happening.
just with all the things that's been going on, and with missing his test, and he's just so like dreaming towards the stars. I mean, he's like a young Luke Skywalker in that kind of regard. Not to like reference the old, the original trilogy, but but the and he's a stand-in for all of us as far as adults now. Whenever as we talked about earlier, a lot of things that he and Neil were doing just are things that we enjoyed as a child, and now that they're like got hyperspace across to whatever realm that they're at, planet they're at now, we're starting to see that loss. And like I said, I do think that as you were referencing before about his father, there's going to be that moment where his dad's going to really take an examination of himself, and we'll probably see the reconciliation there. And also I want to learn more about what's going on with the family. Did his mom
Yeah,
pass away, or did she,
yeah.
what's going on there too? So there's, they laid enough breadcrumbs to the first episode that I was like, okay, when we got to episode 2 and things start to roll out, uh, you know, there was never a moment with the first episode where I like reached down and started grabbing my phone,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
always a good,
That
it's
is
always a
always
good
good.
sign. Yeah.
That is always a good sign. Speaking of which, since you didn't pick up you didn't pick up your phone, are there any cons to this episode that you didn't care for or felt dragged the
Um,
show down?
no, like I said, I think it was just that fine line between like referencing being too self-referential to prior works.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I'm at that point now as a viewer where I'm like, okay, I get it. And like I said, from the very first couple opening minutes of it, I was like, I got a bad feeling about this. They redeemed themselves, but I will have to say that was a con for me, because I think at this point, at this juncture now, let's get to something new, different. I don't want to sound like Denny Villeneuve, but at the same time, I do think that we could come up with some fresh openings, like that, for example, Andor had.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great comparison. Yeah, because yeah, there are moments, and I think I've said this before, even when we talked about the acolyte. Like there are moments when I think sometimes creators want to come on board and show, like, hey, I know Star Wars, and so they echo something that we've seen a million times before, just in the new way. But we can see through all that already. So I totally agree with you in that regards. I don't know if that's something that they like mean to do, or they're just big fans that they just find themselves falling into some tropes from
Yeah.
every now and then.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the opportunity to create one of these shows, I would have to make sure, and I would do something like Tony Gilroy did. I would have someone in that writer's room to make sure that I did not do that, because
Yeah.
we all have like have our head canons, and how, but our head canons still would, like, at the end of the day, probably look very similar to what we like. We will probably do that same opening scene from the from New Hope, or have the pod race, or whatever, fill in whatever thing that, like, your personal Star Wars moment, you would integrate that in there and like have your own take on it. But everybody will be
Yeah.
like, man, now why did you like copy that from, like, why did you pull a J.J. Abrams?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. For me, con, I think just really the pacing at times for me.
Mm,
But I kind of excuse it for being an introductory to the season in regards to having laid the groundwork. But some of the pacing was a little bit off for me, or at least I don't want to say it wasn't as riveting, but I was hoping that there would be a little bit bigger
mm,
build up than what there was. So that'd probably be the only con for me. If I can go back to my pro real quick, I did like the design of the pirates, though. I thought the
yep,
concept of the pirates that we wind up getting, especially Captain Silvo with the mask, and
mhm,
Brutus, the dog and stuff. Getting
yeah,
to see like a real pirate mutiny on our hands, I thought was pretty clever.
yeah, definitely the aesthetics and the costuming, and the use of practical
Yeah,
effects was very I was very welcomed because it was a good blend of both the practical and uh, computer generated uh, special effect and motion effect, puppets as well. Because I know like SM30, the droid actually, I think was, as you noted, it was done with puppeteers. So it
Yes.
was definitely a good mix of all that. I will say, I guess the other con I had was the score didn't like grab me. It was just
Yeah.
it's very, very, honestly, very forgettable. Nothing that, at least for me, at least for now, it didn't stand out.
Yeah, episode 1 felt that way to me. Episode 2, though, I felt it a little bit more. But
Mhm.
yeah, I would say, for sure, um, the soundtrack, or at least the musical score for episode 1 didn't really do too much for me. Um, let's go ahead and grade our episode. Even though it's just us 2 today, similar to
Mhm.
how we did with the Acolyte, I do want us to go ahead and grade it. So, using the legend below at the bottom, go ahead and give us a percentile and what number grade you would probably give today's episode, or the first episode at least.
Episode 1, I would give it a B. I probably 83.
83. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's that at? 83. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you also. I probably would give it an 85. But yeah, I was gonna plan on giving it a B also myself. So yeah, if we divide that up, it's a 84. So we'll grade this week's episode a B.
Mhm.
So that's for episode 1, y'all. I'm gonna make sure I write that down somewhere so I can keep track of it as we go through the remainder of the rest of the season also. But let's go ahead and get into episode number 2. Um, I I guess did you kick off our thoughts on episode 1? I think maybe I did. You kick off your thoughts on episode 2. What did you think about episode 2 overall? I know you were a fan that they dropped them both together.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what separated episode 2 for you? What stood out?
So episode 2, I will say between the two of them, I think episode 1 actually I liked it better. For me, I think episode 2 had some good moments where we do end up on the pirate planet, but whenever they were on the ship, we are finally getting into the adventure, and this is really where, not really getting into where I felt like, yes, this is, we're felt more like a Star Wars show. And because we do have but also Guardians of the Galaxy too. I guess, man, it's hard,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah,
with a lot of properties now, because one thing this feels like a influenced by another, but it did, uh, but even within the Star Wars universe, the Pirate Planet felt like the Jabba's palace, or the bar in Tatooine. The moments where I think maybe a reason why episode 2, to your point that you mentioned about one with Wim, this episode, I think the 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 interaction between the kids did not work as well for me. I felt like they were like leaning too heavy into the archetypes, as far as Fern and Win. Neil again. He's great. I'm not going to bring internet hate on me. Neil is one because um, I don't want to fight that battle, but two, I generally like Neil, especially his true reaction, because he's the spoiled kid who, whenever, like, Wim was like jumping on that bed, and Neil had that reaction like, ew. I mean, it was so like, it was just so like in character that we've forgotten, that we've gotten established with this kid. So I think those yeah. So those moments were like really good. I think the other pieces I did kind of like fade a bit. I did grab my phone with this episode, I will say, when they were on the power planet and the kids were interacting with some of the, not when interesting when Fern was in the interacting with the lady.
Oh,
Um, yeah, just the whole sort of working their way through to me, I felt like the pacing for me with this episode didn't move as smooth smoothly as it did with the first one. So I think that was why I felt I liked the first one better. Not that I didn't like, not that I did not like the second episode. I just liked the first one a little bit more. But those are some of the just top line thoughts I had about the episode.
Yeah, see, this is why I love doing this show, especially when we have a full crew here, because I do love, I don't want to say when we disagree, but when we have difference of opinions in here, especially when it comes to episodes. Because for me, I thought this episode really elevated the series, and
Mm,
I say that because I really embraced the adventure, and I was almost kind of glad to get off the planet a little bit and see what the kids get themselves into. Um, so for me, it was an improvement on episode one. I think because I was just like, yes, now we're finally getting
mm,
into the adventure of things a little bit. And I got to say, shout out to the director in this episode, David Lowery. I thought
yeah.
he directed the hell out of this episode.
Mm,
I just thought some of his scene selections, his shot selections, I should say, the pacing of this episode for me, I thought really worked compared to episode number one. And I guess to me, it also shouldn't surprise me because for those of you who aren't familiar with David Lowery, he literally just filmed the Peter Pan movie with
mm, mm,
Jude Law and a bunch of other kids also. So it's almost like he's still in his pirates
mm,
bag a little bit. And I thought he was like the perfect choice for this pirate heavy episode here. I will say, um, I really enjoyed. I would agree with you in the sense that when I look at Port Borgo, one of the things that does come to mind is Guardians of the Galaxy. It kind of reminded me of Nowhere a little bit,
yeah.
but I still thought the visually, like the choice of how they made it look, sort of all the ships surrounding it and yet anchored onto this asteroid, I thought was really
Yeah.
fascinating choice. But from a visual standpoint, I just thought it was just so expansive in regards to eh, you know eh, the gripe I had against the Acolyte was the set pieces felt a little cheap to me.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the set pieces felt like I was watching an episode of Xena or
Yeah.
Hercules,
Mm,
in regards to how they were set up. But this, I thought they put a lot more attention to detail. I thought the set work along with the CGI to make it look so expansive, like a bustling port back and
yeah.
forth, all the set designs and alien creations and stuff of just
Mhm,
so many various races. Like when the kids
yeah.
step off the ship, I am like them in a sense of like, wow, like
Yeah.
the design to me really took me aback. And so I had fun seeing them kind of get into mischief and get into trouble. The fairy guy that comes and takes them
Oh
from
yeah.
their ship, I thought that was a really cool creature. And then it jumping on Fern's back, I thought was really cool also.
Mhm.
They have a Captain EO. For those of you who don't know the Michael Jackson short film Captain
Oh yeah.
EO,
Yeah.
they had a Captain EO reference in here. If you see the little creature in his hand, this is Fuzzball, I think his name is in the Captain EO show. But there's a creature in here.
Mm,
And Skeleton Crew that there's a couple of species that look exactly like this guy. And it reminded me that for those of you who don't know, Captain EO is actually a co-produced Lucasfilm and Disney property.
yeah.
It was even written by or co-written with George Lucas as well. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
to me, it makes like full sense that he's in there. But I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, they put him in there. So I just the various things. Like, while I will agree with you that when we get moments like this, any bar, any
Yeah.
planet, I think our
Yeah.
mind goes to the cantina, right?
Yeah.
But I just think that they made it just so vast and bigger in here
Yeah.
with more interactions that that's what separated it for me personally.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
fair.
I really enjoyed just seeing that great directing work. The music to me hit a little bit better. Like the moment that you mentioned when Neil and Wim are in the bedroom and they're playing with stuff, there is like a little melody that goes that's behind them, almost like like a family vibe, almost like you could,
Mhm.
like a yearning to be home sort of vibe. And then even when we get to see Jude Law and he's, using the force to pull a key towards him, that, as the music rises and stuff, it's got force elements involved in there. And like, to me, it just, to me, the music really helped carry this episode also. And then just the added mystery to add Attin and the Old Republic credits, and learning about, like, it gave me very Lost City of Gold vibes, like this big myth planet, that a lost planet that people have been looking for forever. And it starts having me connect dots to the planet itself. Like, why was that area restricted in the first place? Like, clearly this ship and this robot, at some point, maybe they were looking for the planet, and maybe they got shot down or and crash landed there, or whatever, or maybe they stumbled upon it, by accident, and people are trying to now kind of keep it a secret. It feels like a conspiracy cover up, almost like
Yeah.
something. It just added more to the mystery, and built on episode one a little bit. So that's what made me enjoy this episode as much as I did, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, those are all like various. As I said, I didn't. It's not that I was like, "Oh God, this is terrible."
Oh
I
yeah, yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think it was more. Yeah, there's just certain aspects of the first episode. That, and I guess for me, I guess my expectations were so low going into this, just given how burned we've been recently with Star Wars. At least for me, at least with expectations. And so,
I feel you. I feel you there. Let me
yeah.
just add to that, because I know exactly what you mean. Because now I feel like anytime I sit down for any Star Wars project, it's always in the back of my head now. And
Mhm.
so I feel like I go into a show, I don't want to say with low
Yeah,
expectations, but like I guard myself a little bit
yeah.
more when I go into these episodes now. So I totally get what you mean there, Will, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's that. So so whenever it came out the gate after I got over my moment, um, that I was like, okay, this is an enjoyable show, and I got past the this is not for me kind of thing, and it was like this is for me. So yeah, so I think the second episode did like for did basically get me to that place where I'm like, okay, I'm on board now. I see what they're going for. I I do like like you said, the adventure aspect of the episode, with the kids getting into all kinds of mischief, whenever they're at the bar, and when miss they like, I'll have what he's having, as far as whatever, and then whenever they get served whatever that was, it was just like, okay, I was like, oh, maybe not. And then of course the whole, and then everything just goes sideways whenever they show the credit, and of course the fight was just dope. I mean, with
Oh
SM-33,
yeah.
that that was again a good blend of action, a good blend of the practical effect and the practical special effects, but also the other, the visual effects working very, very well together. And seeing all the
How did you like Nick Frost as the voice for SM-33?
I liked it. Yeah, I was like, I have forgotten that he was in the show, and also and the only reason why I knew that Urkel, Jaleel White, was in the show, was I just happened to see him do an interview with someone recently that I think it was Christian Harloff. That was like, oh, I didn't realize Jaleel White was going to be in the show, but I didn't know what kind of character he was. So, seeing him going against type, so to speak, but playing a pirate, was also kind of a nice little nod, well, not nod, but nice little surprise there.
Yeah, I liked his
Seeing
voice.
it there.
I liked his voice choice too that he decided
Mhm.
to go with. He didn't sound like Jaleel White, so I'm glad he
Yeah,
changed it up a bit.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, oh, Urkel's a badass now. Okay. But yeah, I think those were the elements that really, like I said, stand out for me, with the second episode. And again, like I said, as I referenced with episode one, the whole Star Trek prodigy of it all, I'm having to like, remind myself that okay, these are two separate universes. And even though there are some similarities with some of the situations that the kids are getting into, and we have to do this with many things, but you know, I guess this having watching season 2 of Prodigy right now, along with this show, sometimes it's hard to you can't, but it's inevitable. Sometimes you just sort of draw those comparisons to the two properties, but I'll
Yeah,
get over myself on
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you mean there. I do want to talk a little bit about Jude Law being
Hmm.
introduced here. Um, I'm very much under the impression, and I would assume that as a viewer, the writers, I'm assuming they want us to believe, or at least connect the dots that he is Captain Silvo from the first
Yeah,
episode.
that was
Um,
my thought. Yeah.
right? Because it definitely, I mean, granted, he's in the brig with the same very
Mhm.
pirates that mutinied him and stuff.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell his voice from episode one a little bit, but yeah, I am under the impression as Captain Silvo. So it does make me curious as to, with him being there, what do you think his situation is? Do you think he's using the Force? Do you think he's a Jedi? Do you think he's a pirate first? Like, what do you make of his character so far, just from the first two situations we found him in?
Yeah, so he could be like, I think about like Kanan Jarrus. He could be like someone who, um, because again, given the time period that we're in, it makes sense that if he were trained as a Jedi, he was in hiding and maybe was using the being a pirate as a cover. So I think so maybe yeah. So either he's is a Jedi and he was just in hiding, or we've also seen, for example, in Rogue One, there are Force sensitive people, and we've seen this in other places in Star Wars as well, where people are Force sensitive, and he's just he's using that. So I think it's one of those two things, but as far as how he's going to be used in this show, I mean, again, I hate going back to Prodigy, but I also said when I was watching it real time, I was like, oh, he's a Janeway. He's going to be the god. He's going to be he's going to help these kids. They're going to have a bunch of different adventures. Yeah, and maybe the ship is his. But then again, especially who knows how long they've been that ship's been on at Atkin, but to your we talked about it earlier. This planet it clearly has people think it's a myth. When you see all the pirates and they're all like, oh, wait, what? Nah, they're all like in disbelief whenever the kids tell them where they're from and stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, so all of those elements again that you what's the line the episode one, you have my you got my curiosity, now you have my attention. Now they
Uh-huh.
have my attention. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a part of me when when the idea that it's like this lost planet, this mythical planet, I started thinking to myself, well, how do people not know about this planet? And then I for some reason I go back to the prequels where where Obi-Wan's looking for the planet and the library
Mhm.
is like the librarian's like, well, if it's not in the database, it does not exist. And
Right.
it just makes
Yeah.
me think, like, did somebody at one point like take this planet too? Like, has it clearly it's been discovered by somebody. I
Yeah.
wonder if the Jedi ever found it. Did they erase it from the databanks too? And I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, in my head, I'm just thinking of Yoda's advice of if they want to find their way home, find where the gravity and the
Yeah.
stars are, around one central point, and there you go, right? Like there's something
Yeah.
there clearly. So I am curious as to why nobody's been able to find it. So yeah, I'm definitely intrigued there for sure. Um, and I will say too, um, going back to the Jude Law, you made a good point of the idea that people can be force sensitive and not necessarily be Jedi. And it does make me wonder, like, can Jude Law do something as simple as levitate something and bring it to him?
Mhm.
But maybe he can't fully tap into it. I know Jude Law in his interviews, I think he did drop the idea that his character was a Jedi, or he referred to him
Mhm.
as a Jedi. But I do wonder if that's a little bit of a smokescreen. Like it does.
Yeah.
I do wonder if he two things. Either, like you said, he's either a Jedi in hiding, and he does have abilities, or he's a pirate who just happens to have some level of force abilities. And I almost want to go that route with
Mhm.
his character, because when he's in the brig with the kids, if you notice, Wim and them mention that concept and idea of Jedi first.
Mhm.
They're like, we wouldn't be stuck in here if you didn't think this was a Jedi temple, and we got caught up in this thing. So
Yeah.
it does make me wonder if Jude Law's character heard that and thought to himself, let me play into this kid's belief a little bit. And it
Yeah.
kind of goes back to what you said about um I don't would you say like Wim might learn a lesson, or he
Yeah.
might learn a lesson in here or something like that. I feel like this is where
Loss of innocence. Yeah.
loss is innocence. And there's a part of me here that feels like this is what this leads to for him, because I
Mhm.
think he's such a wide-eyed kid that wants to explore and see more, that the idea of like, oh my goodness, I'm maybe in presence of a Jedi. I almost
Mhm.
feel like Wim will lose himself in this guy,
Yeah.
only to kind of be conned and fooled and learn a really hard lesson about the galaxy. So that's kind of where I totally agree with you, in a sense that this is where he loses his innocence. Whether it happens that way, I don't know, but that's just the vibes that I'm getting from Wim and Jude Law's character.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I think that's a very plausible uh, plot point that where they may go with this show, because but we'll see. I mean,
Yeah,
or
we'll
they
see.
could
That's the
have.
speculation.
Yeah, it's just speculation at this point. It's just one possible thing, real way they could go. But they could go completely another direction. But that just seems to be, at least out of the gate, one of the potential plot points that we'll see as the season progresses.
Any pros or cons for you in this episode?
Um, like I said, I think the pros were just really building out, like you said, building out the universe, the adventure aspect of it. I mean, it was it was cool just to like get into the pirate land and see all these various aliens, and again, just you know, aliens we've seen in Star Wars before. I think they've introduced some new ones. I mean, you brought up the Captain EO for that was a great call. That was a great pull there with the Michael Jackson video. I had forgotten about all about that,
And
but
the
yeah,
only reason why it came
yeah,
back into my mind is because since my boy's been sick the past couple days,
yeah.
I put on like a Michael Jackson playlist, music video
Ah,
playlist, and literally this weekend, like Saturday or Sunday, it went into one of his Captain EO songs, and it was the
okay,
music video, and so that's
yeah.
why the creature jumped out of me. I
Yeah,
was like, "That dude looks so familiar," because I just seen
yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah. But like I said, I think this episode really, sometimes I have the 3 episode rule, but I'm ready to go to episode 3 and sort of see. Okay, especially with the way that the second episode ended with Jude Law's character using the Force. Okay, it's like, okay, yeah, now we have a Star Wars show here. Whereas
Yeah,
before it was just like, it could easily be like generic, Disney Plus,
you're right.
um, kid show that's just sort of set in it's the 1980s set on another planet. But now we're getting those elements of Star Wars in this show. So let's see where it goes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Pros for me, I was a big fan of SM33. I thought Nick Frost did an incredible job. I would agree with you with the fighting. The fighting scene was pretty cool. I love that he has shields on his
Yeah.
arms, and
Mhm.
as he's absorbing the blast, it's also heating up his shields. I love the scene when he like burns the guy. I thought that was actually a pretty
Yeah.
cool use of it. Same thing, like I said in the beginning, the really cool work of just the aliens and their designs too, and the Attin mystery I just continue to fall for it, in the sense of like, I need to know more about this planet. Like, is it just the one town and the
Mhm.
rest of the world is like there's nothing on it, sort of thing? Yeah, I definitely need to find out more about how this planet is kind of put together. But yeah, overall, man, I thought this was a fun episode for me. Any cons? Anything that didn't work for you?
Like as I mentioned before, I think for me at least there was a little bit of pacing. I know you didn't have any issues with it, but there were just a few moments where I don't know, it was just I just kind of lost focus, or maybe it's just watching things back to back. Who knows? But other than that, no. Like I said, I think this. I don't really have any other like glaring things that stand out
That
to me.
jump out.
I'm not gonna beat up on little kids acting. I think actually the kids act. Actually, I think the kids acting. They they're doing a good job because with when you put this much weight on kid actors with with a show, it can really go one or two ways. But I think overall the kid actors are doing a really good job.
Yeah, this was a standout episode for me with Fern, especially. Like I enjoyed her quick thinking in the sense of outmaneuvering the droid to make her the captain.
Mm,
I love Wim coming up behind him, like, I wanted to be captain. It's like, well, you're gonna have
yeah,
to fight her to the death. Like, it's okay.
yeah,
Like, but Fern really stood out to me in the sense that she's, I don't want to say the leader of the group, but she's definitely taking the bull by its horns.
yeah.
And doing her best out there, and everybody else is kind of falling in line right now, with Wim being the annoying kid that wants to touch and push every goddamn thing. So um but outside of that, yeah, I would agree with you. I think the kids are doing a pretty strong job right now. So yeah, let's go ahead and grade this episode, man. If you had to grade this episode, what are you gonna give it?
I'll give it a B minus.
That's the one I didn't. I was gonna pull it up here. Okay, so B minus. What percentage would that be?
82.
82. Okay. I really like this one. I'm gonna be a little bit spicy here, episode 2. I don't know why. I felt like I was spicy for episode 2 of the Acolyte also, or maybe that was episode 3. I will give it, I'm gonna give this one an A. I'm not gonna go full A plus, but I will give this an A. Probably give me a 94 here. I'm not gonna
Okay.
go too crazy. I'm not gonna give it A plus, but the con that doesn't take it to the A plus for me is the time amount of this episode.
Oh yeah.
It clocked in at like 25 minutes, compared to like 40 minutes for the first episode, and I'm just thinking to myself, why do
Hmm.
this all the time to me?
Yeah.
Like if I had gotten a full 40 minutes of this, especially directing by David Lowery and pacing, man, I probably would have given it an A plus. But 25 minutes, man, for a live action show, I can't do it. So give me a
Yeah.
94. I'm gonna give this one an A. When we divide that up, this gives us an 88. So that's going to be a B plus for this episode. So an 84 for episode 1 and an 88 for episode 2. So make sure we keep that down. So a B plus for episode 2 of Skeleton Crew. But yeah, man. Thank you so much, Will, for joining me, man. I'm glad I always talk Star Wars with you. We'll be back again, like I said before, every Wednesday live at 10 p.m. Central Time. Any overall final thoughts before we go? Anything you're looking forward to? What do you want
Yeah.
to see more type of thing of? Let me know.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the adventure. This I think that's going to be the theme of this show, and seeing what all the various situations that the kids are going to get in with Jude Law's character. So, yeah, I'm on board. I have I'm feeling good about this show, and I think we're in for a treat for the holiday season.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you too. We'll see what our schedule is going to be like for Christmas. I know it's going to be kind of a busy week for everybody, so we'll definitely keep you guys posted as we go through with our weekly reviews. But yeah, as far as things I want to see a little bit more, I remember seeing in the trailer. They come across some type of vault with credits and treasure, whether that's on at Attin or another planet entirely that I don't know, but I'm eager to get more involved. I certainly want to know more about Jude Law's character. Is he really a Jedi? Does he know things about the Force? Do we get any, like, if we've got hints of a Jedi, are there hints of Sith concepts that might pop up in here also? And I think for me, really the kid dynamics and their family story and how they change as we get further into this adventure. So that and more at mystery, and I'll be a happy camper. So how many episodes do we have this season? Do you know? Is it 8? Is it 10?
I think I think it's 8. I think it's
8.
8. I have to double check on IMDb, but I think it's 8.
Let me look it up real quick. Episode count. I think it might be, yeah, 8 episodes. It wraps up January 14th. So 6 more episodes. We'll certainly see how it turns out next week. I'm hoping we have ourselves a full crew. If not, maybe Stewart will certainly join us, but we'll definitely keep you guys posted. But Will, if people want to follow you on social media, man, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me on all the socials at Will M Polk. That's WILLMPOLK. Also, if you're looking for our podcast, it's at Cena Nerd. It's on Twitter X, on Instagram and Threads. We're scene_n_nerd. You can follow us wherever you get your podcast by going to the website there under my title card there, www.scenernerdpodcast.com. Right now, Sarah and I are covering Dune Prophecy, and we're also going to be wrapping up Superman and Lois. We are going to be discussing the penultimate episode and finale next week. This week we discussed episodes 2 and 3 of Dune Prophecy and episodes 5 through 8 of Superman and Lois. So we just dropped that podcast today. So go to our website and you can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for having me. Really enjoyed talking Star Wars with you.
Yeah, man, all the time, man. Anytime there's a Star Wars project, I think of you, man. I'm like, yeah, I gotta get Will to talk about this stuff with me, man. So you're definitely one of the first people I think about. So I
I
definitely
appreciate that.
appreciate you. Yeah, definitely appreciate you spending your time with us, man. I gotta get us a website. Like I gotta get a legit website for A Plus Hero Report. Did you guys create your own? Like, did you guys
I
design it, or how'd you do it?
used Podpage,
Wow.
and
Okay.
it's pretty. You know, they have different tiers. We could talk offline about
Okay.
it, but yeah, I've been very pleased with it. That we've used it now for a few years now.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. If you guys want to follow us on social media, as you can see right up here at A Plus Opinions, we are also on TikTok at Hero Report. I believe we're also on Blue Sky as well at hero report.bsky.social. You can find us over there also, and then everywhere else on social media at A Plus Opinions. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so, guys. If you want to come back for your weekly reviews for Skeleton Crew, you definitely have a home here, man. Go ahead and click that subscribe button. Click that bell notification too, so anytime we drop a brand new video, you'll certainly be notified. And yeah, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And until next week, guys, do us all a big favor. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A plus. May the force be with you. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.